Greetings and salutations, and welcome to episode 197 of Ref the District. I'm Nathan Perry. That's the Stoner. Trev will be here shortly. He is going to be coming on a hot, and Awthentik from Awthentik and the Beard will be on later to talk about the Giants. We've got a good episode here lined up for you on my return. Which, Stoner, we said that Washington would be 7-1, and boy, were we close. Washington 6-2 here, halfway through the season, a little bit under halfway with that extra game, but we will be talking about the midseason in the game today. Kind of talk about where we're at in this recalibration year. I mentioned Awthentik is going to be coming during the cool down to talk about this giant step for Washington against the New York Giants headed up north. We'll also be talking about Stoner's trip up north. He'll be there in person. And in here in the warm-up, it's Noah's Ark. It is the hail, Noah, whatever you guys want to call it. It is going to be reliving probably the best moment in most of our Washington fans' lives, at least here in the last decade plus. Exciting football. We're going to be talking about that game and also specifically what this means for the franchise and how big it is, because it feels like it's not a small moment, but is it a huge moment? We'll be debating that here in the warm-up. Of course, we are brought to you by Bet Online. So head on over to Bet Online and get yourself rolling. They have all the up-to-date information as far as things are concerned. We'll have Trev on later give us the news and tidbits there for our Washington Commanders. But if you want to stay up to date on everything, Bet Online's got you covered, and you can do live in-game betting. And after the game, head on over to their casino where they have 150 different slots and some other card games there for you. That's Bet Online, where you can even set yourself up for, I think it's a $200,000 pot by picking 6 games to win correctly. That's all over there at Bet Online, where the game starts. We're not going to start the game right now. We're going to be starting the warm-up. Stoner, we are X hours removed from the Hail Mary. Washington beating Chicago. Two questions for you, sir.
All right.
First question, how many times have you watched that clip? And then 2, how are you feeling now so many days afterwards?
Yeah, and I'm not exaggerating. I've probably watched it triple digits. It's probably close to 100 times that I've watched it and rewatched it and rewatched. And I like to see like different people's reactions, like, the security guard or the fake Ditka guy who you could actually see on the side over there. But I've watched it, because I got it on the DVR, so I just keep watching it and watching it. It's amazing. And I'll be honest that when we did our instant reaction, I didn't understand at that moment. I didn't understand the gravity of what just happened. I couldn't grasp fully what was going on or what had just happened and how big of a deal it was. I mean, it was awesome and it was crazy and it was all that, but really it was a couple days later, I think, for me anyway, that I really grasped how big it was. And I know Lockdown said something on our post. He said he doesn't even think it's top 10 plays of the last 20 years, I think he said.
Lockdown,
top 10 plays in team history is what he said. So not 20 years. I mean, I thought about it. It's a top play, a top 3 play in the last 30 years.
Easily, right? It's gotta
probably be number 1. What other play is bigger in the last 30 years since the Super Bowl era?
Yep, since last winning Super Bowl, name 3 plays better?
2 plays better.
2 plays?
2 plays that were
bigger. How would you do the Mark Brunell Santana Moss against Cowboys? Would that be 2 separate plays, or is that like one collective moment? Because I feel like that was a collective moment, not necessarily one individual play, right? Because like the first one was exciting, but it wasn't game winning, and then the second one was like, oh my gosh, we just did this.
That's huge. That's a moment. That's different. This is a play. I'm just
Locked
asking
on Law, by the way, is
biggest
agreeing
play.
with you now. He's like, in the last 30 years, fine. He's going to give you that. Locked on Law is going to give that. He's in the chat right now. So is Nathan, JG, ATA, Uptown Dre, Brian in the house as well. ATA is with you, by the way. Watched over 100. I maybe watched over 200. I was on Big Doug and George Carmi's show on Monday, and just like the instant reaction, I just had it up on the side. It just makes me feel good to have it.
Right.
I'm surprised I don't have it right now on the side, because while I was editing, it was up and everything. It's been a good week to just watch it over and over again.
And think about how different your week would have been had they lost that game in the last few seconds.
Would have been miserable.
I mean, how miserable you'd be this week when keeping it in context of your overall life, but still just kind of how miserable you would be thinking about that, and just how happy and how good you feel about everything because that play happened. And that's the effect of sports in general, and that's the effect that the Washington Commanders have on our everyday lives specifically. So, I mean, it was a massive play. I don't think I'm overstating it, Nathan, if I say this. I think it is a franchise-altering play.
Really?
A franchise-altering play. Meaning, and this is what I mean by that, is that in 10 years from now, when we look back and this team has been, who knows, whether it's winning 5 Super Bowls in a row or just being a normal organization, we're going to look back at this moment. That this is going to be the moment where we said, okay, all the demons are exorcised, all the curses are gone, all the bad juju is out.
I mean, these were the black jerseys. People talked about the black jerseys being a curse, but now this is literally a part of our identity.
Yeah.
And by the way, I love this picture for those audio listeners. Can't see it. This is the picture of Jaden Daniels with eyes in the back of his head, just avoiding the black, what is his name there? Doesn't matter. Chicago player on the ground. And Jaden Daniels, your Stoner's head's covering it up there for the graphic. But I loved this picture, and that's why I had to put it up there for today.
But do you guys agree that now it's like this deep breath? It's okay. Good things are going to happen. We can have nice things. Mm-hmm. We can have a well-run organization, and we no longer have to wait for the other shoe to drop. We can have a great head coach. We can have a franchise quarterback, right? We can have nice things now. And this was the moment that allowed us to say it's okay to believe now. Yeah.
I mean, it's weird kind of putting that on in a mid-season game, and especially maybe just a fluky play. I mean, I love it. I'm ecstatic about it. And I love seeing things like this from Nathan here, who plays it over the PA at work for the 2 Cowboy fans over and over. And they even love it. That's awesome. That's great. So I love seeing that. And we were talking about it being one of the top 3, if not the top play since the Super Bowl victories, right? And we mentioned the Mark Brunell, Santana Moss game, the fourth quarter comeback as a moment. And I think that's probably important to call it a moment, right?
Yep.
And then what? RG3's run down the sideline against Minnesota. I mean, I guess maybe, I mean, he had a big game, but like a moment. I'm talking like a specific moment, Trev. What do you got for us?
Maybe you could count the Kirk Cousins coming back.
You like that moment?
You like that moment when we came back and won that game? You like
it's
that?
on the other side of the TV there that you like.
Maybe that's a moment too.
That's a good one. I hadn't thought of that one. That's a good one.
That's a good one. By the way, I really wish that goes away. We need new towels. We need the I'm like that. That's what Jaden Daniels, after shushing the Bears sideline, goes down the middle of the field celebrating. And he's like, I'm like that. I'm like that. The confidence this young man has is fantastic. Absolutely.
Bro, he was so calm afterwards too.
Oh, he did. He threw it. He caught it, and he just looks over at our sideline, and that our sideline had lost it, and they're all charging the field. And that's when he's like, "Okay, we're celebrating. I'll let this one go. We'll celebrate." And turns it over, and
just for a few seconds though, and then he just went right back to the calm guy.
Even keel. Yeah.
He said
crazy.
something today. Ben Standig had tweeted this out earlier. Ben Standig had said, Jaden Daniels, your 48 hours after the game had to be wild after that play, right? Jaden Daniels responds with, it was pretty normal for me. I went about it the next day and yesterday. It's in the past. I was on to the new week. I was going to save that for my transition to the Giants game, but talking about how even-keeled this guy and how professional, and like you were saying, Stoner, we as a franchise, for the first time in generation, can finally say that we have something to be proud of consistently, right? We have a QB who we can trust. We have a coach who everybody loves and is wanting to work with. You have Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs talking about how they miss him in the locker room, right? And you have Adam Peters, who someone had recently shared today, because the Philly fans are all upset about this Jahan Dotson trade and how it's not working out for them. And then I want to give Uncle GoDaddy Coco at Just Cardo his flowers here. I posted a video that came across my feed, and it was the draft, and Adam Peters traded with Howie at that point. Remember, we went back from 40, and Howie's trying to get one over on Adam Peters, the new GM, right? He's fresh. He might have been an assistant GM, but this is his first time being a GM, and Howie's trying to work him, and Adam Peters didn't back down, and even went as far as to say, we'll draft him. Like, he knew exactly who Howie was trying to go up for. He stuck to his guns, and then he gets a good deal on Jahan Dotson. And it's just like having somebody like that. We're not even talking yet about the fact that Jaden Daniels is a hit, right? It looks like Mike Sandstrel's a hit. Johnny Newton had the best game of an interior defensive lineman in week 8
in the NFL.
Brandon Coleman looks like a solid left tackle. At worst, he might be a swing tackle, but he looks like a solid left tackle. You're getting McGee back, who is, by the way, so impressive that they got rid of Jamin Davis, a former first rounder. Like, Baptiste has been in the rotation as a 7th rounder on the edge and hasn't looked lost. It is amazing to say that this turnaround, which is supposed to be recalibration, is just so good. And so, coming down to this one moment, Trev, do you feel, like Stoner said, that this is the moment we're all going to look back at and say our franchise is built different?
Yeah, it is. We never caught breaks like this in the past. We never had something like this to cheer about in the past. We've had specific moments, but this moment for us this year has lasted 8 games. Actually, it's lasted since April when we drafted Jaden Daniels. That's how long this moment has lasted. And I think we're going to go back and look on and say, hey, this is where we started to turn things around. The page was turned, new chapter, new book, new era. Heck yeah, man. And I don't remember the Super Bowls in my lifetime, so I was like super young, like 4 years old. I remember Sean Taylor a little bit, but not that much. But seeing highlight tapes, you knew who he was. So yeah, my moments were you like that, RG3, and now this. And I can't stop looking at this. I'm still like, I still can't believe that like it happened. I can't believe it happened for us. Like, you see it happen everywhere else, but like for us, for an organization that's been struggling so long to just find some kind of piece of success and consistency, that this is definitely going to take part of that. So I agree.
I mean, what would the narrative be if we're sitting at 5-3 and we let Caleb Williams and those Bears fans, who we've all grown to put into I think they've moved past Giants fans into the 3rd most hated fan base in the NFL for Washington fans, behind Dallas and Philly.
I did get called out by a Chicago fan for my instant reaction of telling them to suck it. He's like, I will not, in fact, suck it.
But where would we be today as a franchise at 5-3, having blown a lead in which we absolutely dominated the game for most of the game? And, the pass interference and BSJ would be getting run out of town on that 4th down pass interference.
He should still be. He still should be.
And the jerseys are cursed. right?
We should have drafted Caleb instead of Jaden Daniels. I knew it was too good to be true. I knew he would hit his rookie wall, and Caleb is
all of that
trending. Yeah,
all of that we would be saying today, and we would still be saying same old skins, right? We'd be saying it's the same thing that we've been doing, but it's different. It changed. It happened to us. A good thing, a momentous play, the biggest play of the year so far in the entire league. Through 8 weeks, through half
the NFL is pumping this out like crazy.
It's massive. And you know, you do it at home, and you do it with a massive crowd, and you do it in America's Game of the Week, and you do it with Jim Nantz with an iconic call, right? All of those things put together, and it's all in our favor. It's all on the positivity of this organization now. So that's why I think it's the moment that we'll look back on, because we won't remember, you know, the Monday night game against Cincinnati when Jaden Daniels went crazy and had an incredible game. We had like 2 incompletions, right? We won't remember that 5 years.
More touchdowns than incompletions that game, right?
We won't remember that, even though that was the moment where he turned into him, right? But this moment is what we're always going to remember, and it's just amazing. I think before Trev got here, we all talked about how many times we've watched that play
over and over and over.
100 is not an exaggeration.
Low balling. Some of us might be up into the thousands at this point. It's just something we could. I'm going to disagree here with Sweezy Squad Gaming. One, thanks for joining us tonight, Sweezy. You're talking about if he doesn't complete the Hail Mary, right? Sweezy is saying Caleb wouldn't be trending after 10 completions. I very much disagree with that, because
I do too.
It kind of twofold here. One, Caleb played fantastic down the stretch for Chicago.
He did.
Okay. He played like poo-poo almost the entire game, but that doesn't matter. And we kind of see that with the Hail Mary, right? Like, it doesn't matter that Washington was about to lose that game and they win on a Hail Mary. They won on a Hail Mary, all good vibes. If that falls incomplete, if Stevenson does his job correctly, right, then Chicago is celebrating, and the talk of the town is Caleb has that it factor, that he was able to come back down 2 scores against a team, and that's all that the focus would be. It wouldn't be on the 10 completions. It'd be on the few that he did to make sure. I mean, that Keenan Allen throw was fantastic. I mean, like he's going to be a good QB in this league. I do believe that. The focus would have been there. And the focus would have been, as Stoner mentioned, the same old skins. I talked with George, and he was with Keith, one of the hog farmers in the stands. And I'm sure you two felt this way as well, right? As they were driving down, it felt like same old skins. We knew the Bears were going to score.
We knew
it was just inevitable. It's just what happens to this franchise and to us as fans is they're going to score. Then Johnny Newton comes out with the ball, and you're like, hey, maybe we're going to do something. And then we have to punt it away. And they're like, oh, here it goes. We had tweeted out, maybe just let them score. Give yourself some time, because you know they're going to score anyways. You might as well let them score the minute 36 rather than 27 seconds.
Yeah.
But boy, oh boy, did they not.
And you know what I like?
Have to live that world.
Yeah. And you know what I really love about really that whole drive is just how focused, well coached, and I think focus is probably the word, but how everybody on one side of the ball for Washington did everything exactly as they're supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And everything on the other side of the ball, they did everything they're not supposed to do. Because if you look at how Washington played that drive, right? The pass to Ertz, the first pass was incomplete. They had what was it, 12 seconds?
12
after
seconds.
That first pass?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. It was incomplete, right? From your own 20-something yard line. And then he throws a really nice pass to Ertz, timeout immediately. 6 seconds. Now, don't do the Hail Mary now. If they're going to give you 12-yard out, take it. Just get that much closer. And Chicago didn't even defend it. They didn't even bother. You have the free yards, right? Which didn't make sense to anybody. And then the actual play, you had the Washington offensive line you had 6 of them, right? Because Eckler was back there blocking. So you had 6 offensive linemen. You had 4 guys downfield. The 4 guys downfield did exactly what they're supposed to do. McCaffrey and Ertz, you go and just try and disrupt the ball. McLaurin, you stay short in case it comes your way. Brown, you go to the back in case it comes your way. They had 3 rushers and a spy. Why are you spying Jaden Daniels from 65 yards away from the end zone when you've got 7 more guys back there?
Why is Montez Sweat not part of that 3-man rush? Why is he on the sideline?
I didn't realize that Montez Sweat wasn't even on the field.
Nah, dog.
Your best edge rusher?
He may have been hurt though, because he's not even practicing this week at all. But but still the same, right? But again, a spy. Why do you have a spy on Jaden Daniels on a Hail Mary? Let him run 40 yards downfield. I don't care. He can't throw
and then pitch it back to one of the linemen, right?
Yeah. So, and then they didn't have anybody, obviously. You're supposed to have somebody on the guy.
Stevenson was supposed to follow Noah Brown, which is I mean, that poor guy is going through a heck of a week right now.
Well, he deserves it.
Deservedly so. He is mocking Washington fans on the field. This is during the play. Well, before the play, he's mocking them. Chicago fans are pointing like, hey, the play's going on. The play's going on. So then he finally turns around and he starts paying attention. But Chicago, unlike Washington, was not disciplined. They were very undisciplined, and they were all going for the ball. Stevenson himself was the one who ended up tipping it up and into Noah's hands, who was his responsibility. Just absolutely wild, play there.
And I think, for me, I think it's a fireable offense on Eberflus because he had 3 timeouts.
He's not going to last the season. If they lose 3 games in a row, he'll get fired.
Well, I think he should be. I think that's a fireable offense. I understand they're not going to fire him.
I mean, they're still winning record.
Right. But still, I mean, that sort of undisciplined. And it just goes to show you that one side was so well coached and well prepared for that exact situation, and the other side completely unprepared. How do you not take a timeout? You got 3 timeouts. Let's talk about it. Let's talk to Stevenson and remind him that he's got the deepest guy. Let's talk about, do we really need a spy? Let's
they had 2 guys on Terry McLaurin.
3 timeouts.
Exactly.
They
also, by the way, the Chicago fans love to talk about the holding that was on that play. Looking down the field, they had the Chicago defense like laying out our players. Okay. It is a Hail Mary. They, for whatever reason, they don't call it the same way that they call anything else. It's kind of an anything goes type deal. And it is literally a hope and prayer that you're going to get there.
Yeah, that's what it is.
I did want to tackle this before we continue this conversation. Good. Joshua had posted this a bit before. Joshua saying presser for Caleb, said it wasn't his fault because he can't play defense too. Good QB, not humble. Now, that is actually not what happened. That is just something that people posted. And because Caleb was not a well-loved character, people ran with it and believe it. But I just wanted to kind of quell that here on the show, that is not what happened. Caleb Williams, during his post-game, he didn't take accountability right away, but eventually he did talk about taking the accountability and everything.
He did not say, I can't play defense too.
Yes, he did not say that. He did not say that. Thanks, Stoner, for calling that part out there. And I know I'm not blaming Joshua or anything there. I'm just, because Lord knows I've seen it a lot on my feed today. And so I just wanted to make sure we understand that. Because I know we're going to compare these 2 QBs, and we like the fact that our QB is humble and getting after it the day after a huge win like this. But we don't have to be like many Chicago fans who are trying to tear down Jaden Daniels while propping up Caleb Williams. So we don't need to stoop to that level.
That's right.
We know Jaden Daniels is good, and we can give Caleb Williams his props for, again, playing darn well there at the end of the game. Just unfortunately for him, he got outplayed by Jaden Daniels almost the entirety of the game there. So
season.
It's so far the season. Yeah. I told you guys at a draft, before the draft, Jaden Daniels is going to be offensive rookie of the year. He just has,
he has
all the talent. I called it. So I should have put money on it, but I didn't. So
It's okay.
Let's speaking of our awards that we can get out, why don't we move on from this play and let's head on over to the mid-season to talk about our mid-season awards. We're going to be hopping that in the game. Stick with us. Welcome to the game here on Ref the District, episode 197. I see Stoner has starred something that has his name in it. This is coming back from the talk about that last play. You, Stoner, had talked about how Chicago had all 3 timeouts, and they didn't take one to make sure that their people were in line. And Jim here said, it's 2 seconds, Stoner. What is the timeout going to do? Keep Stevenson from around with the fans?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's exactly what it'll do. You get everybody together, you refocus, you remind everybody of their assignments on this one play, where you need to be. Don't let a guy get behind you. Don't tip it up in the air. Knock it down. Maybe we don't need a spy for this play. If it's 2nd and 10 with a minute and a half left, spy is probably a really good idea. But for a helmet, just reinforce. That's what timeouts are for, is to make sure everybody's on the same page for something that's upcoming. So yeah, that's exactly what it might do. It might keep Stevenson a little more focused. Yeah,
maybe just a little bit, or maybe he's still talking trash even during the timeout, but that's neither here nor there. We don't have to worry about that. We are going to talk about the midseason. We're going to wait for the Giants discussion until we get Awthentik here on the channel. That'll be coming up in the cool down here. Right now, we don't want to sleep on any of these players and any of these awards, and you don't have to sleep either. If you head on over to don'tsleepenergy.com, use the code district, get yourself 10% off your entire order, whether that's merch or any other fantastic things. This is a local DMV company that you can support and get your energy needs. They have the regular version, they have sugar-free version, they have some fantastic of those little shots. Those are usually my go-to. And when I need that energy, Don't Sleep Energy. It makes you great. Now let's talk about the greatness here on this team, because we're going to keep this all positive. Yeah, unless you guys really want to be negative about a 6-2 team when we win, as I think Locked On mentioned earlier, Vegas had them as 5.5 wins on the season. So we're playing with house money now, so let's talk about first, what's been the biggest surprise, or who has been the biggest surprise this season, Trev?
What or who? Can I do either one?
I'm going to go with who, because I think what is the fact that we're 6-2.
Wow, I've got a couple of good ones.
Yeah, get in the chat here. We had a couple people jumping in late here. Blake, Tommy, Yam, all coming in here. Roger's in the house now as well. Go ahead and let us know who your biggest surprise is so far of this 6-2 season, because we're 8 games in. There's 9 games left. Washington, I think I saw today, has like an astronomically good chance at making the playoffs.
Yeah. 74%, something like that.
Yeah, it's good. P&W Trout Slayer here is like, hey, wait a minute, guys. I predicted a 10-7 season. Have you adjusted that, P&W? Because I'm just saying, at 10-7, that's only 4 more wins on the year. It's going to be a very bad down the stretch for Washington.
I don't know if it's the biggest surprise, but it's a surprise for me. Jeremy McNichols' role with the team. All off season and preseason was like, third down back, maybe fourth running back that they keep, maybe use him for special teams like kickoff returns, whatever, this and that. Might get cut, might not make it, but he's actually found himself as a little bit of a role in this offense. Even when B-Rob and Eckler are healthy, they still put him in there just to switch it up a little bit, give different looks. I was not expecting that at all from McNichols. Like I said, probably be a cut candidate or practice squad or just kickoff returns, which barely happen now since they have the new rule, whatever. So, yeah, that's one of my surprises I think I have is Jeremy McNichols.
I mean, there are so many to choose from. I didn't have them 6-2. I had them winning 7 games the entire season. I didn't see how it was possible. Last year, I had them winning over 6 games, or the 5.5 that was out there. And I thought that was easy. And of course you lose that. And then so this year I was like, okay, I'm going to slow my roll a little bit. But there's so many surprises, and you're putting a lot of them out there. The Austin Seibert, I mean, he's Seibert. He's kicker 4 or whatever it is for this team. He's missed what, 2 field goals?
I put him on my fantasy squad today, honestly.
He's on EPs and he's been killing it for her.
Yeah. Just the offensive line's ability to control the line of scrimmage. It has been a huge surprise, and specifically Brandon Coleman playing as well when
Bobby Johnson, who was probably the most lamented coach hiring.
Yeah, was it?
Right? As Awthentik in the beard here pointing out, Bobby Johnson in that offensive line. Big surprise.
Yeah, a lot of people did not like that hire when they brought him in. But defensive line as well. I was very low on Fedarian Mathis. I was not happy about the Dante Fowler and Cleveland Farrell signings. I thought they were just kind of, let's get some bodies in here, right? And those Fowler's been great. Farrell's been above average than what we expected. And Fedarian Mathis, who was basically an afterthought, a lot of people thought he might get cut in camp. He's been awesome. And then Johnny Newton has finally lived up to sort of his pre-draft hype that he was supposed to be the top defensive lineman, interior defensive lineman. So there's just so many that we did not expect
so good
for any of these things. We didn't expect maybe on the back end with our safeties. They have, Chin hasn't been bad, right? No. He started off a little bit bad, but
we liked the safeties. It was the corners that we had concern about, and
we still do.
Still have some concern there, but defense is trending upwards.
Yeah, are we going to go through each group?
We can, but I just collectively I want to do the surprise because I have one. I have a kind of a in my head how this is going to go. But
cool.
Yeah, a few of these first.
I'm gonna go Cliff Kingsbury a little bit too. Yeah, I knew our offense would look different, but I didn't think he would line up 8 different runs and out of 8 different formations.
Made a believer out of Stoner.
He has not. He's kept his game plan the same as far as balance attack, pass and run, but every game you don't see anything that's like kind of repetitive with this offense. Like maybe a couple plays here and there you do, but for the most part, it's like always different looks, different people for targets or whatever. So I didn't think that was going to happen. I thought people would figure out his offense after like 2 weeks, and we'd be like, okay, well,
remember like the first game or game and a half or two that people were complaining that he's not giving Terry the ball. Now Terry's in the top 5 and yards, touchdowns, catches. Like he's going to have a career year, and it's fantastic. We've been waiting for that to happen.
It's interesting. I did kind of do a little bit of looking up on Terry. Last year at this time, after 8 games, he had more catches than he does this year.
Sure,
it's barely.
He had 40 back 50 times a game.
Right. He had 42 catches at this point last year. This year he has 40. But last year he had 495 yards. This year he has 579.
Yeah.
And 4 touchdowns as opposed to 2. So he's getting the ball about the same, but they're bigger plays, and he's finding the end zone.
And I will also again say during the first half of last year, the team wasn't a complete and utter disaster. It wasn't until they lost 9 games in a row,
right?
Which that's the halfway point. They were like, okay, maybe we can salvage something from the season, and then they just went poo-poo. Right. Yeah. So he was lucky to get to 1,000 last year there. Oh, offensive line getting the most love here in the comment section. Zach Ertz was somebody you mentioned. Seibert was another one that in there. Luvu was somebody somebody had mentioned that there. CJ Shoot Photo was talking about Jaden being a surprise because we knew he was going to be good, but come on, this good?
Yeah,
I mean,
this fast.
This fast. I mean, he does. He looks so poised, and you're watching. If you want to watch the all 22, or you want to watch somebody who's really smart break down all 22, like they all talk about how you can see him do the things of a seasoned vet, where he is looking off defenders just long enough and then finding those open windows. He is absolutely fantastic. The offense, you guys, Stoner was not happy with Cliff Kingsbury hire. A lot of people thought this was going to be an air raid and it was going to be just like an EB 2.0.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a 52-48 run to pass ratio.
Yep.
We have one of the top rushing attacks in the league right now.
Mm-hmm.
How about that defense? Who we all thought, okay, this is a bunch of average people, but we have a good defensive line. Maybe we'll be able to do something. And they were getting trashed 3 games in, and people were calling for Joe Witt Jr.'s head.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And now, over the last 4 games, they have one of the top defenses in the league. And even if you don't even take into account to the last 4 games, they are above average in most metrics.
They are.
And
they are.
They haven't really played a lot of great teams over the last ones, but you still got to think they played Baltimore, they played Cincinnati, Chicago. Coming into this game over the last 4 or 5 weeks, they were on a heater.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Caleb Williams, I think, threw 300 yards in 3 of the last 4 games coming into the Washington game. He had multiple touchdowns in most of those games, and he didn't reach 150 yards against this defense, against this cornerback room, who we all know is the weakest link. And if they're going to do a trade, that's probably where they're going to target, right?
Trev,
and
Trev, this Washington defense is 6th in pass yardage defense.
Yeah, which is wild. But that's because our D line and linebacker group is amazing. It has nothing to do with
I know this feels very similar to last year when Trev was hating on Kendall Fuller, and when in fact he was actually having a really good year.
Mm-hmm.
We know the limitations of Benjamin St-Juste, right? We know he doesn't have the speed. We know he doesn't always have the awareness that the ball is coming his way and he needs to turn around. We know he's a little handsy, all of that. Benjamin St-Juste is a pretty good cornerback. And I know we want to run him out of town because of that one play. Go back and look at the 55 other plays where he had his guy completely covered, where he was blowing up plays in the backfield, where he was he was well coached, so he was figuring out what the play is and making something happen before they could actually try anything. Some of those overthrows that Caleb had were because Benjamin St-Juste diagnosed it and went to the guy in the backfield, and Caleb had no choice but to throw it. He's not a great corner. He's a very serviceable corner. He's playing cornerback 1. He should not be cornerback 1.
He should be
right?
CB2. Sure.
He should be CB2. So yes, they need to improve there, but we have to lay off Benjamin St-Juste a little bit, I think.
I am not.
I know you're not going to, Trev.
You didn't against Fuller, and Fuller was having a much better season last year. So I don't expect you to.
Half the time, he's getting burnt out there. It's just we don't give the quarterback enough time to look that way to the person he's guarding. You can go back and look at some of the tape too. He's getting burnt a lot. He's overplaying. He's cheating. He's using his hands. He's not very technically sound. When he's supposed to jam a receiver and go, he gets jammed so easily and gets left in the dust. We just don't give the quarterback time to see that play. So if we did, then you'd be on my wagon too about St-Juste.
Well, I hope we don't have to find out.
He's got okay games, but he ain't, like you said, he's not CB1. He just happens to be that for our team because we don't.
I mentioned this in the short that I answered a question about why don't they start Forbes over Benjamin St-Juste, and I was like, stop hating on Benjamin St-Juste. Forbes. They'd play Forbes if they thought he was better than Benjamin St-Juste, and he's not. And Benjamin St-Juste, this is literally the one thing I think he needs to do. Just turn around his head.
Thank you,
Ben. Turn around.
Thank you.
That's it.
True.
He's right there. He's always right there. If he just turns his head around, I know that he would be a better defender, but he can't. He doesn't turn his head down.
Noah Igbenogany should not be starting as a corner, as an outside corner. Mike Sanastrell should not be starting as an outside corner, right? Yeah. And Igbenogany should not be in the slot as a starter.
Sure.
They're there because of the weaknesses in that area. And this is the best way for this defense to operate with what they've got.
Yeah.
And again, that goes back to the coaching of Joe Witt Jr., of all of those defensive coaches and everything, saying, we're not going to play Emmanuel Forbes because he's a number 1 draft pick last year. We're going to play Noah Igbenogany, who most people hadn't heard of until he got here.
Can't say his name correctly.
Yeah,
Not that you did. You got it right.
And won that job. Or they played Sanistril in the slot for 2 games, and they said, this ain't working.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do something to switch it up so that it'll work a little bit better. And that's what they've done. But you're right. They're not going to play Forbes over BSJ because BSJ is better. When they played against Baltimore, and they said Baltimore almost never runs 3 wide receiver sets, right? So we don't need that extra corner. That was Forbes. That was the one that was inactive that day. That's what they think of Forbes. And so they're not going to do that just because, Benjamin St. Juste is not CB1. He has to be for this team right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, we kind of slid a little bit and started talking about the defense, and I want to pull it back a little bit. So we talked about the biggest surprise or who the biggest surprise is. Let's talk about who the best coaches on this team, because it's not clear cut. We just talked about Joe Witt Jr. coaching a bunch of mediocre talent into being a good defense. You have Cliff Kingsbury, who has, although the Chicago game didn't land, and there's been 2 games now where Washington has had red zone issues, still has the 2nd highest scoring offense in the NFL. You have Dan Quinn, who has gathered these people and has kept cool throughout this entire process and recognizes things and has been the leader that this franchise needs. You have a Bobby Johnson, who has the offensive line playing with such, where was this last year? These, I know we changed 3 of the 5 guys out there, but this, and I know it goes in with the offense and how it's being called, and Jaden Daniels being fantastic, but my goodness, this offensive line is playing a heck of a lot better too. So who is the best coach? And special teams, Izzo as well, for special teams. They're doing fantastic when they're called upon.
I got 2. Actually, maybe 3.
Just give them all. You just name them all.
Anthony Lynn, run game coordinator.
Big
I know
time.
we had Randy Jordan here for a long time, and we had Adrian Peterson here, and we had Robert Kelly, and we had Alfred Morris, and this and that, yada yada. And we had B-Rob. He was showing a little bit last year what he could do when he gets the ball more and more. And Anthony Lynn, I think, former head coach, run game coordinator for us now, has taken the running game to higher levels than what we've seen in a long time. I'm going to go Daryl Tapp, defensive line. He's got them boys. He's had to – look what he has to do now. He has to find a way to make this defensive line scary without Jonathan Allen. He's had to make this defensive line look like a serious threat to an NFL offense with Jags, no offense, but with Dante Fowler and Clean Farrell.
The pressure count is through the roof with this team.
That's for sure. And then I'm gonna go Ken Norton Jr., the linebackers coach. Ken Norton Jr. He's making these linebackers play with their hair on fire. I know Frankie Levy was always that kind of player already, but it feels like he's got Bobby Wagner drinking out of the fountains of youth a little bit. He's up there. I think like 4th in the league in tackles or something like that. He's expected to have over 140 tackles. They're making plays.
Number 1 PFF linebacker, by the way.
See, and we're mainly just running 2 linebacker sets. And they're like the top 5 linebacker duo I think in the league right now or something like that. So I'm gonna go with those 3 coaches, those position coaches.
That's an awesome list there. We're gonna name all the coaches at this point because that's great. A couple notes here. First on Wagner. He again made an adjustment at the line. Caleb Williams goes up to the center. He goes to audible. He's yelling down one way, and Wagner mirrors him. So as Caleb going the line and adjusting, Wagner goes up. He's listening, and then he starts putting everybody in place. And they were able to stop that play. And it's at least the second time we've caught that here on Ref the District. And there might have been more, but it's just having a player of that caliber is just fantastic. And then Luvu, learning from him and flying around and being, as Joe Witt Jr. said, in that Parsons role and just excelling and being so good. And then you mentioned Tap, and this is something I think it was Orlovsky had talked about how well coached this team is. And you see that Joe Witt Jr. Defense, and specifically the defensive line, and the breakdown that he did was they knew exactly what was going on. And even this young man, Johnny Newton, he broke through the offensive line with ease, which he can do on his own, but he stopped. And it almost looked like he froze, but he wasn't freezing. He just knew, wait a minute, I've seen this on tape before. I know what's going on. This is a screenplay. Going for Caleb is the mistake. Let me stop what's going on. And they are all doing it. And they were taking away first reads, and it was fantastic. But it's just, that's kudos to you for coming up with those names, because they are all being well coached. Stoner, who do you got for your best coach award here at 6-2 midseason?
For sure, I have to give my apologies to Cliff Kingsbury, because he's done a tremendous job with this offense. I was wrong. I did not like the hire, but I love the hire now. And what Joe Witt Jr. has done with the defense is mind-blowing, especially after that first game against Tampa, when we were all saying, oh my God, this is the worst defense in the history of the league. We saw it. Everybody was saying that, right?
It was pretty bad.
And I get that. And what they've done, turning into the 10th best in points per game in the league. We were just hoping for somewhere around 20, right? Somewhere around the 20 number.
22.
Okay. Right. Because it was 32 last year. Let's not forget that.
Yes, it was.
Denver gave up 70 points to Miami, and they were not the worst team in defensively in the league last year. Washington was. However, none of this happens without the leadership of Dan Quinn. The Dan Quinn hire was an absolute A++ hire because of who he is, how he treats people, what he expects out of his coaches, and then to be able to put together this kind of staff and allow them to do their job without him standing over their shoulder, giving them the autonomy to coach the way they should be coached in his vision, him and Adam Peters' vision. It's all been about Dan Quinn. The way guys talk to him. Nathan mentioned at the beginning of the show, the way Micah Parsons and Trayvon Diggs talk about him now that he's gone, and how much it's hurt
With
their
reference.
locker room, right? And how much they loved playing for him. And so I think the Dan Quinn hire was the biggest thing. I believe a team takes on the personality of its coach, right? You see out on the field how they are coached inside the locker room. This team is disciplined. They're focused. They're super well coached. They understand what it is that they are supposed to do on each and every play, right? And you see it with the quarterback, how well prepared he is. Now, that's a lot on him, but still, the coaches are preparing him for that. All of that. And it all comes down to Dan Quinn. It was a home run hire, and it's exactly what this organization needed at this time, to be able to have it marry all together with a new owner, with a new GM, with a new head coach, with a new quarterback, all of that. And we're reaping the benefits of it now. If you look at all of the plays that we watch now, and they are so well coached, and we haven't been able to say that in so long. And I give all of the credit to Dan Quinn.
Because, like you said, he did build this coaching staff. And remember, at the time, it was like a bunch of all-stars like getting drafted for an all-star game for this coaching staff. And it wasn't just for name and clout. It was for like all these all-star coaches, former players too, who are now coaches and coordinators, wanted to come and work with Dan.
Come here. Right.
It wasn't like, oh, that's Anthony Lynn. Let's just go say what's up. It's like, no, Anthony's like, I want to come there. Brian Johnson just left
former head coach Anthony Lynn, taking not a coordinator position.
No, just a run game coordinator position.
Yeah, like a
Brian Johnson, who was in Philly with the Super Bowl run they had. Tavita Pritchard's a holdover. Daryl Tapp came over. Ken Norton Jr. came over. Larry Izzo, former player, Super Bowl champion from the Patriots, came over. Like, all these coaches are all-stars, but they all wanted to be here with Dan Quinn. So that does say a lot about Dan Quinn.
And Joe Witt, being that they
Joe
worked
Witt, yes.
together in Dallas,
Yes.
and he says, I still want to work for this guy. I've worked for him for
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
I want to continue to work for him.
Mhm.
Cliff Kingsbury, who gave up an offer on the table from the Raiders to be their offensive coordinator, says, no, I want to go work for Dan Quinn. And it's, again, we talked about at the beginning of the show, that we can have nice things now. This is what happens to well-run organizations.
It's just so weird. I don't know where to put my hands when we have these nice things. Like,
yeah,
is this real?
We're
Like,
so
real?
not used to it. Shout out, by the way, a couple people joining late here again. Big Stevie, thanks for popping in. Just for you and to egg Stoner a little bit. Go blue, right? Go big blue. Go big blue. Did I mess that up, Stoner? Can you tell me how they say it?
No, I can't, because you're not going to get that out of my mouth.
Mike Stanistrol, thanks for that one, Big Steve. And then Scooby, appreciate you jumping in here. Aberdeen beat the Rangers. That's good for the Celtic team out there. Of course, that's some of the other kind of football going on across the pond there. Appreciate you jumping in. Coach Lombard coming in here as well. We are talking about our favorite coaches, and Stoner, Dan Quinn is a fantastic pick. And I'm going to share a little bit of the story here that was posted on the Commanders website today. And it was about a young man, 22-year-old Drew Sinclair, who was just the guy. He's an intern. He's in charge of the kicking balls, which means he's just supposed to make sure the kicking team has it. After the Hail Mary, Noah Brown drops the ball in celebration, and this kid, Drew Sinclair, just realized he was just like, wait a minute, we're preached, the ball is life. And he runs out there, and I think it was the rally captain had a great video clip of it, but he runs out there and he like dives on the ball and he collects it, because he's like, this is going to be a moment for the team, right? How about Dan Quinn? Giving him the kudos, the flowers during the team huddle in the locker room, calling Sinclair out specifically for collecting that.
Yeah.
How big is that the head coach is going all the way down to an intern to give him props?
Yeah.
That's the kind of leadership that, as people will tell you, makes you want to run through walls. You can have that machizo, yell, rah type stuff, but you got to back it up. And this right here, this is the level of leadership that will continue to keep this team thriving. Okay. There were some big worries. Well, what if they go on a losing streak? The rah stuff will get tiresome. Not when it's backed like this.
Yeah.
Not when you feel it in the bones. Not when you have coaches like Joe Witt Jr. who are coming from a Dan Quinn tree. Dan Quinn might end up having his own tree, much in the way that you see a bunch of offensive coaches have their own trees. And it is about this type of leadership and teaching. One of the things Joe Witt Jr. preached it multiple times now. He talked about how his job is to teach. His job is to coach. If they're not getting it, it's not the player's fault. It's his fault. He's taken that ownership. And that comes from a Dan Quinn thing. So yeah, coming from the top, absolutely fantastic. I can't argue with any of these selections here. Because they're all just doing so well in a season that we didn't really expect them to be playing this well. Even if you had them at 10-7, as PNW had them at 6-2, playing this level, good. I don't know that any of us in our wildest dreams really thought that was going to happen outside of Trev's all dubs schedule.
and the schedule going forward it's not scary.
No.
Like it sometimes can be, right? You obviously have you still got 5 division games, which are always difficult, but your out of division games are, Tennessee, right?
Saints,
the Saints, right? The Falcons are pretty good, but I mean, teams like that, Pittsburgh, they're a good team, but they're not someone you're necessarily scared of, right? Because offensively, they're not super scary. But it's not a daunting schedule. You're not playing the Chiefs. You don't have the Chiefs on the schedule. You don't have the Bills on your schedule. You don't have all these Lions.
The division
on your
games look
the
winnable.
Vikings. Yeah,
Yeah,
the
they
division
do.
games are more winnable. So
Yeah.
this can keep going all the way through the end of the year, and we'll worry about next year when you're going to have a tougher schedule. We'll worry about that when we get there. But for right now, this is a huge opportunity. You've gotten through really the most difficult part of your schedule, where you thought Cincinnati was going to be a good team. Cincinnati, Baltimore, Tampa Bay, those were teams that were supposed to be really tough, and that was supposed to be the hardest part of your schedule. And now you kind of got past that. Although the division, like you said, you never know. You could literally go 0-5 in the division and still be a good team, because this division is always so tough.
Yeah. All right. So we talked some about the defense. Let's talk about the offense as far as the midseason here.
Yeah.
Defense, really big improvement after the first couple of games. Offense he had a couple questionable games, but outside of that is doing pretty well, Trev. What do you think? What do you make of this offense midway through the season?
A night and day from the previous years.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're like you said, we just scored 18 points and we're still second in the league in offensive scoring. All the stats can prove it. I don't know them off the top of my head, but we're like top 10, top 5 in a bunch of categories on the offense side of the ball. We're moving the ball down the field efficiently. There's been a couple games where finding the end zone has been pretty hard. We got to shore that up, but for the most part, we're giving our kicker easier positions to score field goals rather than kicking 45-yarders or longer field goals. A lot of people are contributing. You got Noah Brown being a good number 2. You got Dammy Brown, who's not being utilized as much, but when he does, he makes things happen. Like I said, Jeremy McNichols, Austin Eckler. You got old man Zach Ertz,
I thought is pretty good so far.
Yeah, so everybody's contributing to the offense to make this thing go. And it's just great to see. It's just great to see us actually look like an NFL offense, and we're getting first downs, and we're 8 for 8 on fourth down conversions. Like that's hard to fathom too. Like 8 for 8 on fourth downs. Like that's
we're
just
9
crazy.
for 9, aren't we? Is it?
Or 9
Do they
for
have
9,
one this
like
week?
that.
Not
No,
this
I don't
week.
think so.
So I think it's
But-
8 for 8 then. But
The creativity is great, and the execution is working. It's actually being executed because, we've had a few coordinators in here that wanted to get a little cute, one little fancy, a little tricky, but it was just like, what are we doing, bro? Like, why are you running a double reverse on 3rd and 15? Like, what are you doing? Instead, we come out on 1st and 10 and do that, or like, a lot of different RPO actions, a lot of different. It's just a great, very, very creative, different offensive style that we've seen and been accustomed to in the past years. Rather, just Hut, fake handoff, throw, or Hut, handoff. Jaden Daniels is lining up under center a lot more than we've probably imagined because he didn't do that much in college, and he's handling it very well. So whatever the offense is learning, they're retaining it, and they're bringing it to the field with them and executing in a way that we're leading in stats of across the league, a lot of stuff. So night and day difference.
it is. How many times have we just hoped that this team could average 20 points, just get to 20 points a game, right?
Man.
And because it's always like
2 or 3 seasons in a row that we were like 21 points or less on the season.
It's crazy. And now they're at 29.5 points per game, and it fell from last week, and they had a decent offensive game this particular week. But it is night and day. And everything Trev said about this offense is so accurate because it doesn't have to be fancy. You don't have to run flea flickers, and you don't have to run all these double reverses and everything to be creative.
Right.
And they have been extremely creative in terms of keeping the defense off balance. You run 2 linemen in one direction and 2 the other one. How do you know where the ball is going?
Exactly.
The offense knows, but the defense doesn't. It's going to constantly keep them off balance. The time of possession, they're up there. The efficiency, all those EPA, those fancy stats, they're up there in all of those. And a lot of that has to do, of course, with the play of Jaden Daniels. They're not turning the ball over. They're not dropping a whole lot of passes as they have in years past. And it's just so refreshing to be a part of a competent offense, because we've always said this, right? It almost doesn't matter what the defense does. If the offense plays well, at least it's more fun to watch.
Yeah.
Right? It's not fun to lose 15-12, which would have happened have the Hail Mary not happened. That's not fun to lose that kind of game. But if you lose a 38-35 game, at least it's more fun.
You had something to celebrate. Yeah,
Yeah, you
sure.
had a little bit
You
of fun.
were singing "Hail" in the middle of the stadium.
Yeah. So it's just so much fun to be a part of that and to watch it go down. And it is absolutely night and day from the last 4 years since Kirk left.
Yeah. Yep. What I really appreciate this, I mean, you brought up some of the advanced analytics stuff, right? The EPA, the even Daniel CPOE, which is completion over expected, completion percentage over expected. These are all fantastic stats, and I love it. The DVOA is saying that Washington's a good offense and stuff, and it just seems like there's a solid plan going in every week. And the defense that we're playing always has a plan to try to stop Washington.
Yeah.
And to this point, they really haven't been successful. Yes, the Giants held Washington to 7 field goals. And yes, the Bears held Washington to 12 points minus the Hail Mary. The thing is what I love seeing are these sustained drives, because while we've had some red zone issues this year, the fact that we're just getting that many opportunities shows you that that's something that's going to improve. If you can get to the red zone, you're going to score points, right? You want it to be 7 and not 3,
right?
That's going to come with more experience and stuff, and seeing, going through some of those motions and trying to figure it out, because even I would say it's not been a consistent problem. Right. I mean, there's been games where it was like 3 games in a row we put up over 30 points. When's the last time we did that?
Right.
We didn't have red zone issues then.
Right.
It was just 2 games we can kind of think about that we had red zone issues. This game against the Bears and this game against the Giants back in week 2, when I think they were still trying to figure things out. But even that drive, no punts?
No punts that game.
No punts that game.
7 field goals. Right. So they kept getting down there. They just couldn't punch it in. And then the next week was Cincinnati, when they figured out how to punch it in and went on that roll.
Yeah. And as Anthony here mentioning, most of the red zone issues have been self-inflicted. There's penalties. There's just, not lining up right. There's been maybe not the play call coming in and, like it should be. This offense, I think, has, as scary as this is for the rest of the NFL, room for improvement.
Yeah.
For sure.
Second highest scoring offense, who's putting up yardage, in the top 5 for rushing and passing, has been one of the most efficient passing teams this season. We're saying that they can improve. That's insane.
Yeah.
That we know what we're leaving. And this is something to the coach's credit that they talk about as well. Like, hey, we left meat out on the bone. We got to do better. And I love that mentality. And I love how this team continues to push towards greatness there. So
isn't it great that we have somebody who can throw a deep ball that actually gets there?
What, we didn't want to put Marcus Mariota in there to throw that, as Tony Romo had suggested? Yeah. I love Nance correcting him there. He's like, well, I mean, we did see Jaden Daniels complete 2 deep passes this game. So good times. So we talked defense, we talked offense. Let's move over to special teams. First game of the year, not as close of game as it could have been, because there was 2 missed field goals. Washington, let's go. I can't even remember the kicker's name at this point.
I can't either.
Was it Cade York? Was that who it was?
Oh my God!
It was Cade York. It was Cade York. I was for the life of me.
We traded him we made a trade for that guy.
7th, which we don't have to give up because he was cut. So we literally got him for free. And then we cut him for free. So Cade York gets cut. Here comes in this kid, Austin Seibert, and he just makes all 7 of his field goals.
I don't understand.
He's only missed like 2 all year.
Why did it
this horrible 50-yarder that he just ate the ground?
Why did the Jets let him go? Like, what was the reason why he was let go from any team, honestly, but like specifically the Jets? Because that's where
he doesn't have a big leg. Is I think the thing, right? Yeah.
Well, that means you don't
want to be consistently having to kick 50 yards with this kid.
That your offense is stinky if you have to keep doing that.
I know, but
in my opinion,
I just don't understand where it came from. Where just we caught magic in a bottle with this kicker.
Yeah,
I mean, he was he was not on their radar. It's not like they traded for him and
No,
some
we
team didn't want to let him go, or he was this.
We tried out all these other kickers before him
Yeah.
too, which is crazy.
It is crazy that, and you know, good on Adam Peters for finding the right guy, but the rest of the special teams have been great, right? Tress is doing what Tressway always does. He's no longer the team MVP, which is awesome, right?
Yeah.
You don't even know who the long snapper is, which is perfect, right?
Tyler
we don't want
Ott.
to know his
I was
name.
about to say, it's Tyler Ott. That one name I do remember.
He
We
came
don't
from
want to know.
Baltimore, which is cool.
We never heard of him, right? And we haven't heard his name called this whole time. They haven't let any sort of long kick returns.
No.
Not one.
No.
They haven't had any long punt returns. And think
No.
about on the flip side, how many long kick returns have we had? I mean, Eckler returned one against the Giants that got called back, right? And he's had another one where he had a massive return.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, special teams has been awesome. Other than I think that Giants game when the brand new guy, the linebacker, the special teams ace guy.
Oh yeah. He's come along now. He's gotten
and he's right. You haven't heard him, and so special teams has been great. I mean, it's crazy. I don't know what's going on here.
We got a good team. We actually have a good team. It's crazy here. Luis did have a question for us. It's a little bit of a nitpicking, and this goes back to the offensive side of the ball here. Luis saying the only thing was somewhat worried about was those 2 timeouts wasted in the second half against Chicago. Something about miscommunication on the sidelines. Any thoughts on that? And I'll add to Luis's thing here. This isn't a isolated incident against Chicago. We've seen this a couple of different times. The teams had to burn timeouts. I think it was even Cincinnati. Jaden Daniels is yelling at the sidelines like, hey, give me the play call. We're moving here. And they end up having to take a timeout and not getting the play off. And we've seen that a couple different times from this kind of coaching staff where we're maybe not using our timeouts as efficiently. Now, that being said, we have seen instances where it seems like clock management is not an issue. So, Stoner, you first. Where do you stand on the miscommunication and these timeouts that have been wasted for this offense?
It's definitely a concern, and it's probably going to bite this team in the butt at some point in the future if it continues. And I don't see why it's not going to continue, because it hasn't, like you said, Nathan, it's not an isolated incident. But they do run so many different sets with so many different players, and they're not huddling up and kind of getting everything together. They're doing it on the fly. And sometimes you're going to have those miscommunication if you got 3 or 4 different guys who are coming in to change out based on the certain play call that you have. And so I think that's some of it, but they definitely have to clean that up, because there's been a couple of times this year already where the team is ready, but the referee's standing over the ball because we substituted late, so therefore the other team is substituting late, and they have to call a timeout or they're going to get a delay game. It is an issue. Think of that last drive. At least they did have that one timeout, but if they had more, maybe they do some things a little bit differently. Maybe they do things differently on defense when Chicago's driving at the end, and they can use more timeouts, right? So yeah, it's a concern, but man, if that's really our biggest concern, our biggest concern is the secondary. If that's our second biggest concern, that's not bad. That's, we're not concerned about the DEA raiding the facility, or
was it DA Ryan was his name?
Yeah, or we're not worried about the team's announcer getting fired, and
there was a cable that fell on the fans, but and
nobody cares.
Nobody cares when you're winning. When you're winning, that stuff doesn't matter. Trev, miscommunication, is it going to be an issue going forward for Washington?
Possibly, yes. I don't know if it'll be as frequent as it has been this first half of the season, but I do think it might be an issue, like Stoner said. It could bite us in the butt in the future. Maybe if it's a playoff game, or an instance where we need to go to the playoffs, or some game that has a lot of meaning to it, could bite us in the butt. But it just seems like Cliff has so many plays he could call at that one time. He doesn't know which one to call until the very last minute. Like fly right X32. Wait, no. Fly right X344. Actually, no, wait. Come back. Like that's what I feel like what it is.
Perfectionist in that, right?
Yeah, like he's got to get the exact play call. So I think they just need to shore that up. Use timeouts more wisely. Maybe dumb down the plays. Maybe the play is too long verbiage. Maybe it's too many different kind of words that mean the same thing if you dumb it down to less words. I don't know, but it definitely is an issue. But like Stoner said, if this is one of the biggest issues we have on the team, then that's saying something. I just don't want it to bite us in the butt at the wrong time. But I'm just glad it hasn't happened quite as frequently as it did at the beginning of the season, but it's still there.
Last question here. We got a couple in the queue here that we'll take care of from Jeremy, JG, and we're going to take care of those in the cool down. But this last question here for the midseason, okay? We're 6-2. This team is performing well. We just talked about how good of a team this is. Alonzo here from our Facebook, appreciate you jumping in, Alonzo, is asking, could this be the surprise year for the Commanders to go to the Super Bowl? How good is this team, gents? Is it like Alonzo is asking, a Super Bowl year? Or should we just be thankful we get to 10, 11 wins and are in the playoffs?
Judging by how the Detroit Lions and the Philadelphia Eagles have started to come along, we are right there in the NFC. I think as the playoffs were today, I think we're the 2nd seed. But I still think we're still too much of a learning team to get to the Super Bowl. Yeah, we're 6-2, which none of us here thought we'd be 6-2 right now. It's a surprise. But I feel like we're not quite ready to go up against those teams I just mentioned. I feel like we are on the way there, but we're still not quite ready. Like we're beating teams we're supposed to beat, but let's be honest. It took us a Hail Mary to win the game on Sunday. I'm just saying. Yeah, we're like second in the nation in points, but it took a Hail Mary to win the game.
Sure.
And if it was the Lions, it would have been a beat. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like we wouldn't have been in that position. I don't know.
Goff is playing out of his mind right now.
Yeah, I think we're on the way there, but I don't think we're there yet to be a Super Bowl. I mean, anything could happen. Lions could lose in the playoffs. We don't even play them, like this and that. I mean, we lost to the Ravens by 7, but you could still see the difference. And I don't know. I don't want to say maturity, but continuity or we haven't. This is a brand new team. We haven't been together like this at all, except for this 1 year. So I think we're on the way there, but we're not quite there yet. So yes, it would be a surprise if we did go, but I'm not. I'm just ready for 10, 11 wins, playoff game here and there, and I'll be just fine.
Host a playoff game would be fantastic.
That would be sweet.
Yeah, let's not get over our skis here with this team. There are still some issues that are going to show up when we play better teams, right? The talent level on this team is not where it needs to be if you want to make that sort of run, right? We need to that needs to be improved if Washington is going to make a deep run. Right now, they're being coached to a level that has them at 6-2. I don't think the talent is quite there yet. And Jaden's going to need some seasoning as well to kind of, because he's lifting guys above what their talent level is, right? Some of the guys on the roster shouldn't be on a roster if it's a Super Bowl type team. So we're getting a little over our skis with Super Bowl run. But I think this is a team, especially where it has positioned themselves within the division and within the conference at this point at 6-2, with a not super difficult schedule the rest of the year, that it's almost at 70-something%. It's almost inevitable that they will make the playoffs. Once you get into
anything can happen.
Anything can happen. So we'll go from there. But not the type of team you're going to look at and say this is a Super Bowl contender at this point.
Yeah, they do lack talent. Yeah, they do like talent. I do like where Washington's at, and I love the mantra after the Hail Mary from offensive and defensive players of, as long as we've got 5, we're still in it.
That's
right. And I do think that there's a certain bit that Jaden Daniels is elevating the team himself, not just the offense, but the team that really believes in him. I think this team, we talked about it earlier, 75% chance, I think is mathematically where they're at as far as making the playoffs. I do want to see them beat more teams with a winning record. Beat the winning teams.
Sure.
You lost against the Ravens. You played it close, but we played it close against Tampa Bay. And Tampa Bay went on to win a Super Bowl, and we went into more losing seasons, okay? I don't want to play them close. I want to beat them. I want to beat the good teams. I want to be there at the top. And, it would be great. It's going to be weird saying this right now. It'd be great to lose the NFC Championship game, okay? I know it sounds weird. You want to make it to the Super Bowl, but if we were just in the championship game, I know the team won't feel this way, but I feel this way. I'm just happy to be here. Okay.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's where we're at right now.
Yeah. Again, the team, I'm not going to be happy with the playoffs. I'm going to be happy with hosting a playoff game, win a playoff game, get to the championship game. And then again, that's where I'll be like, okay, it was a successful season. We're good. We didn't win a Super Bowl, but this was great. Let's do better next year when we have more talent in there. So that's going to wrap up our mid-season review here. Jared's going to take us into the next section here, the cool down. Ask it, is it for sure we're stopping the Giants on Sunday? I believe so, says Jared. Well, we'll find out as we're going to be talking to Awthentik from Awthentik and the Beard here in the cool down. Stick with us. Welcome back to the channel. Awthentik coming to join us here from the Giant side. We appreciate it. We appreciate it. I do have a
special
applause
box
button
for
here
me and everything. It's very welcoming here, man. Good to see you fellas.
Yeah,
Good
well,
stuff,
you
man.
say
How you
that
doing?
now, sir, but once we get going, you might not feel so welcomed as we don't
prepared.
talk
I'm
highly of the Giants. But I know watching Awthentik and the Beard, which is a great channel. If people here have not been out there, make sure you go there. He was in the chat earlier. You can find him there. But Awthentik and the Beard, great. The Beard, he's a homer. He's with us. You guys are best friends for life, and kind of split there. With your love of which team here. Big Giants fan, and I love your takes. You've been brutally honest with this Giants team not being at the draft. You were so mad they didn't take a QB and they're running it back with Daniel Jones and everything. What is going on up north that Dable, Dan Jones, they're starting to fight openly? What is going on that it's just this season is just even worse than I think most people would have thought for the Giants?
Kind of reminds me of the last conversation we had. I want to say it was about 2 years ago when Stoner was telling me that the Giants were frauds. And not that I disagreed with him. I did think that whole playoff run and the playoff victory was a bit of smoke. And I think that this team, especially from the top down, from owner, from John Mara down to trickling down to the general manager and Joe Shane, started to kind of feel themselves just a little bit too much, thinking that this team was actually ready to compete and ready to just put some pieces around Daniel Jones. And, that would take us to the next step that we needed to get to. I mean, we made it to the divisional round that year, played a very, cupcake type of schedule in 2022. And I think they went the wrong route when they did that. I was one of the few Giants fans that actually wanted to go a different route at the quarterback position after that 2022 season. I thought it would have been a better move to go with a bridge quarterback and draft a quarterback in that upcoming draft, maybe a Baker Mayfield. I even thought Marcus Mariota at the time. I was very high on Marcus coming out of Atlanta, being a guy that I thought could run that 2022 version of the Brian Dable system. So I think they've just made some mistakes from top down, and now they're starting to kind of realize that. But I think you could really point at the general manager being 1 foot in, 1 foot out. He got here, and some of the first things he said was, we're going to compete for today but build for tomorrow. And that just sounds a lot like what Dave Gettleman said, where he was saying we were going to try to compete and rebuild this team. And it's just a cycle of a never-ending Twilight type of zone type of thing with Daniel Jones, because, I mean, we've been podcasting since 2019, and I have not seen any other quarterback as the starter, entering a season besides Daniel Jones. And he's a guy that I think can do some things, but, is very limited, doesn't have the lateral movement. And if you guys know this from this year, I mean, if you don't got the right guy at the quarterback position, you really don't have any chances of succeeding in this league.
I didn't realize that since you've been podcasting, it's Daniel Jones the entire time, 6 years now. That's crazy. So you're down bad, right? The Giants are down bad. The team on the other side is on their way up, right? We've got the the general manager in place, the coach in place, the quarterback in place, right? You live and work in Washington, D.C. Are you sort of are you ripe for the picking? Can we bring you over to the side and bring
Of
you
course
on
not.
as a fan now?
I mean, it's not like I'm one of these young dudes. I know a couple of my Giants homies, my youngins, in their 20s.
Yeah,
They've been
that's
converted. They're following good quarterback play. They're like, I'm no longer a Giants fan, but I'm 41, man. So, that casket is going to be dipped and draped in a blue towel over the top of that thing, man. I'm pot committed at this point. There's no change in teams, obviously.
Okay. All right. I thought maybe he was
He's
vulnerable.
got a couple
Trev.
Super Bowls too, and 41 years he's been
Oh
able
yeah,
to.
you guys got to. If I was
celebrate
going
that.
to trade franchises, it wouldn't be with you guys. I mean, come on now, y'all ain't won a Super Bowl in 30 years, guys. Come on, I know where I'm at.
I thought he was vulnerable, Trev. I thought maybe we could get him over, but I guess not.
It's the baby face. He's 41. He don't look 41. That's what it is.
Yeah.
So you kind of touched on this with your first answer, but it's been reported that John Mara and Joe Shane aren't ready to move off of Brian Dable and Daniel Jones. What is the reason behind that? Is it that smoky playoff run that you guys had 2 years ago, or is like the Coach of the Year award from Brian Dable a year ago? Like, what is keeping them to hold on to these two people a part of your organization? That obviously,
which I remember, Awthentik. You called that. You said the Giants were going to beat. Was it Minnesota?
Yeah, because the first time we played them, we played them really well. We ended up losing by 3 points in that first matchup. But to the question, so John Mara did come out and say he's pretty much committed to the general manager and Joe Shane and Brian Dable, and he said Daniel Jones is the quarterback. I mean, this is how I look at it. They set up the contract for 4 years, but it had a 2-year out, right? They paid Daniel Jones $92 million guaranteed, $160 million contract. The out in the contract is at the end of this season. He also has an injury clause in that contract that if he's not healthy by the time they go to take the physical entering the 2025 season, he's going to be owed an extra $23 million. This is a very similar situation to Russell Wilson in Denver, which is why they sat Russell Wilson on the bench for the last couple of games that year to protect the injury clause. So they're in a terrible situation right now. And to me, if I was them, I would protect the injury clause towards the end of the year. The Giants now, according to ESPN, have a 1% chance to make the playoffs at 2-6. So if you lose, 2 to 3 more games here and then you get to the bye, I would sit Daniel Jones down. The dead cap hit, if you cut him at the end of this season, is going to be about 19 million, or no, about 20-something million. You would save 19 million, right? And then you could bring in a new quarterback. If you keep him on the roster, the dead cap hits for the next 2 seasons are just way too high to be able to cut him. So if Daniel Jones is on the roster, come June of 2025, he's going to be the quarterback for the next 2 years, 2025 and 2026, which, like I said, this is Twilight Zone. This is like, we have a chance to get out of the contract. I know John Mara said that. I don't think he's completely committed to that. You can look back at the last 3 coaching fires, and they all happen the exact same way. Ben McAdoo, after the 2017 season, they told him the same thing. He's safe. He ended up getting fired during the season. Pat Shurmur, same thing. The Joe Judge situation, 2 days or 2 weeks before he got fired, John Mara came out and said, no, Joe Judge is our guy moving forward. Joe Judge had a meltdown on the podium after his last game with the New York Giants, and he got fired that Monday morning. So I don't, I understand they're saying things to try to make it appear to be one way. But at the end of the day, if the Giants spiral out of control, this isn't a team that was committed to the rebuild and is losing games. This is a team that paid the left tackle. They paid a defensive tackle. They brought in Brian Burns at $28 million a year. They paid the quarterback $160 million. Those aren't things that a franchise does if they're rebuilding. Our general manager is preaching patience. This stuff takes, time, and it's not going to happen overnight. But the way that they have operated it is as if they're trying to get to a chip right now. Had they have drafted a quarterback, even if they kept Daniel Jones on the roster, if they would have drafted a quarterback and had him as the successor, fans would have been able to be a lot more patient. But at this moment in time, we're sitting here with the same quarterback. There's not a quarterback in NFL history that has been given this kind of a leash, right? Outside of maybe Alex Smith in San Francisco, who dealt with major injuries. And I always tell people, New York is a very blue-collar type of state, right? Where, like, if this quarterback was like, let's say, a Jameis Winston, he would have been out of here in 2 or 3 years. But they felt as if that this was not Daniel Jones' fault. And Dave Gettleman did fail to build around Daniel Jones in the beginning of his career, right? The only wide receiver that they had drafted in the first 2 seasons was Darius Slayton in the 5th round. And then they had this all-out last-ditch effort in 2021, which I thought would be the last year we saw Daniel Jones, where they brought in Kenny Galladay, they drafted Kadarius Toney, they brought in Kyle Rudolph from Minnesota, they brought in John Ross, they brought in all these different little weapons that they thought were going to be able to make Daniel Jones succeed. They did not apply any of that to the offensive line, and in return, Daniel Jones got killed and got hurt again. So you're talking about a quarterback that's been hurt 4 out of 5.5 seasons now. And it just doesn't make no sense that they're still committed to him. It's almost like they can't look at the mistake and put it in the rearview mirror and just move on.
Yeah, they seem like you are with your team pot committed at this point, and they're all going to write it out there. Now, I had a neighbor's question, but I'm going to table it for Gus here, who wants to know how big of a mistake was Hard Knocks offseason for Dable and Shun? I feel bad that their mistakes have been magnified, burned by Saquon, going cheap on backup QB, no trade up for Jaden Daniels. Not that Adam Peters was ever going to let that happen.
Right.
But how I know you loved the Hard Knocks and you had some great things to say about it, but unlike what it worked for Detroit, didn't make you guys lovable.
It did not. And it was the first rendition of the off-season version, right? Mm-hmm. So you're not seeing like a lot of the player cut transactions and things like that. You're really just seeing a magnifying glass on the front office, which I love that. To me, it was one of the most interesting versions of Hard Knocks in the history of Hard Knocks, being able to see how these negotiations go down. Now, the New York Giants have final say on the cut, right, on the edit. And I'm a videographer by day. I'm in the film business, the audio media business and all that, right? And if I'm smart enough, when I see the edits and I see the things that I've said that are going to be compromising or that are going to be, detrimental to how people view me, I would have edited these things out. Joe Shane went out there on Hard Knocks and literally said that Saquon Barkley was going to be worth $7 million on the market.
Yikes.
As he was paying Devin Singletary $5.5 million a year, $9 million guaranteed.
Right.
So it goes to show you how foolish the thinking is behind a general manager. And look, I'm not trying to sit up here on some high horse like I know better than these dudes, but at times I feel like I do, right? Like these dudes, his son is in the room telling him, Dad, you only get one shot at this job. You need to go get Jaden Daniels. And Dad's like, I don't know. Maybe we need to go get the wide receiver. And it just magnified all the issues that we as fans, some of the critical fans, because I don't know if this is like this in the Commanders fan base these days as much, but like in the Giants fan base, more people want positive takes and like positive narratives. They don't want to see people be critical of the team. So when we've had all these questions about Joe Shane, I mean, you look at the first draft, man, this dude had 11 picks in the first draft in 2022. We have nothing to show for that except Kayvon Thibodeau, literally. That's it. Wow. Kayvon Thibodeau's drafted number 5. Then you went Evan Neal, number 7. You went Wan'Dale Robinson over George Pickens in the 2nd round. Cordero Flott. You had Micah McFadden in the 5th round, who's just an average linebacker. And then the other 4 or 5 guys that they drafted are not even on this roster anymore. Yeah. They come back the following year in 2023, and they double dip on some of the same positions that they had drafted in 2022. Drafted Daniel Bellinger in 2022. They traded a 3rd-round pick to get Kadarius Toney in Kansas City. They used that 3rd-round pick to address tight end again, and they bring in a washed-up Darren Waller who's obviously headed towards retirement, right? Then when that doesn't work out and he actually retires, they go in and they spend another draft pick the following season on tight end and draft Theo Johnson. So all they're doing is they're not drafting for BPA. They're only drafting by need, and they want to fill holes on this roster to try to win games. I love to get to see that, on Hard Knocks, it was confirmation for me, like, this guy is in over his head a little bit, and I'm not saying go fire him tomorrow or nothing like that, because the 2024 draft class has been a bit better. But at the same time, like, you look at some of these moves that he's done. He's the same guy that said, there's no way you can screw up having 2 picks in the top 10 at 5 and 7 and then went and screwed them up. Our left tackle went down this season in Andrew Thomas, one of the best left tackles in the game. Yeah. And you got Evan Neal just sitting on the bench collecting dust as a top 10 pick. And you're bringing in guys that you drafted barely in the top 100 in Joshua Zidu. And then now they brought some dude off the practice squad, Chris Hubbard, to come in and play left tackle. And the offensive line looks like it's in shambles. All their moves have been for the now. They can preach that they're moving for the future. All their moves have been for the now. You look at the offensive line signings that they've done already. It's a 3-year deal is the longest deal, which was to John Runyon Jr., who's one of the younger guys they brought in. But then you got Jermaine Illuminor that they brought in from the Las Vegas Raiders at right tackle. This dude preferred a 2-year deal with the Giants. All the other offensive line signings from Greg Van Roten to Aaron Stinney, all 1-year deals. So that just screams to me that they're doing all of this to try to build an offensive line around Daniel Jones. They're not doing this to try to build an offensive line for the future, which is just that you just don't get it done like that. And you look at their track record in Buffalo. They didn't draft well on the offensive side of the ball in Buffalo. All they got was Josh Allen, and that's really it. Gabe Davis, maybe, and that's it.
Man, please don't fire Joe Shane after that.
Yeah, I mean, he'll help you guys out for sure, man.
Yeah.
Keep them all. Keep Gable, Jones, Shane. Just run it back. Pull a Jerry Jones Awthentik and go all in next year by just
do
not
nothing.
making any changes.
Listen, man, if they do that again, if they go back to 2025 and they commit to Daniel Jones, I told this to the beard, I'm going to start covering the entire NFL because, like, there's no way I'm going to be just covering the Giants like this. You know, this stat came out the other day, and I damn near fell out my chair, man. The Giants have started off 2-6 or worse 7 of the last 8 years, man.
Wow.
Yeah. And another stat I know that kind of blows you away. What is it? Daniel Jones hasn't thrown a touchdown at home and all year or something like that.
All year.
Or in this entire season.
It's been all year and some of last year. Look, the last time that the MetLife fans, it was when I was talking to y'all on our last time we chopped it up. Last time the MetLife fans have seen Daniel Jones throw a passing touchdown at MetLife was in 2022.
Wow.
It was when we clinched the playoffs against the Indianapolis Colts. That's the last passing touchdown that they have seen.
Wow.
Trev, he might be vulnerable. We'll check in with him again.
Gus has asked me
maybe after the game
a onesie. I'm rocking a onesie this week for our victory against Chicago. Hoping to get one here against the Giants. And let's shift away from the Giants organization and kind of move to this game. Last matchup, Malik Neighbors went off. And he's had a fairly good season, but against Washington, he had 10 catches on 18 targets. Pretty much the only one Daniel Jones was seeing, 127 yards and a touchdown, really abusing a defense that hadn't found its way 2 games in the season. How do you see him performing against a defense that Stoner has pointed out has been 6th all year long in passing yardage?
That's kind of crazy to hear, actually. I mean, y'all pass defense was terrible last year, too.
Right.
And you guys lost Cameron Curl as well. I mean, Malik Neighbors went crazy in that last matchup. The drop on 4th down at the end of the game, which really could have sealed it, that I think could have changed the narrative, not only about your team, but just, the New York Giants in general. Could have changed the trajectory of our season possibly as well. I got some numbers here in front of me. He caught 127 of Daniel's 178 yards. Daniel was zoned in. That's all he was throwing the ball to was Malik Neighbors. And as of late, it's been Wan'Dale Robinson getting some more targets and whatnot. And Darius Slayton has come alive in the last couple of weeks as well. But I think the tape is kind of out on Malik Neighbors now. And teams are doing a better job of stopping him, especially after coming back from that concussion just a couple of weeks ago. So I don't foresee it being a 18 target type of game again. But they're going to have to focus on him. They don't have anything else on this offense. And I think that's also where the general manager went a bit wrong. It's like, get a weapon, lose a weapon. And if the goal here was to bring in Malik Neighbors at the 6th overall selection to be Daniel Jones' new weapon, I think you needed to prioritize bringing back Saquon Barkley because Saquon had a lot of success, even with boxes being stacked up against these defenses. If you bring in Malik Neighbors, Jalen Hyatt, Darius Slayton on the outside, all that speed, there's no way you'd be able to stack the box. So Tyrone Tracy has come alive the last couple of weeks. I think he's a good running back, but he's just a different kind of running back. Not necessarily known for that home run, even though he had one against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I just, I think Malik Neighbors, teams know now, like, look, we have to try to find a way to stop that guy, make everybody else beat us, which, in return, I think is going to be Darius Slayton might have to play a larger role in this game if the Giants want to have a chance.
Do you think going forward that the Giants are going to, be sellers? I mean, you only got a week till the trade deadline. It's next Tuesday, but are they going to start kind of selling off pieces? It's not big usually in the NFL, right? People don't usually do a whole lot of that, but you think they'll be sellers? I know they're
I
not
don't
going to be
think they got
buyers,
enough.
but
You know, this is
yeah,
like a
have
yard
any?
sale that you trying to clear some garbage out of the garage, but nobody really wants it, right?
He's
Like,
killing his
what are
team.
they going to sell? You know, that's
Yeah.
my thing. They've paid their 4 cornerstone pieces, 3, I'll say, the 4th being the quarterback that they thought was one. But like, you can't trade a guy like Dexter Lawrence right now. You can't trade an Andrew Thomas while he's on IR and injured for the rest of the year. You just brought in Brian Burns. You'd lose some money, but then it would also make the general manager look more like a fool. So there are a couple of guys, and I did a stream on Bleacher Report today kind of highlighting this. I think that the perfect guy to get rid of before the deadline would be Devin Singletary. And I think the perfect team for him is right within the division, the Dallas Cowboys. They can't run the ball. They're last in rushing yards per game. They're last in rushing yards per attempt. They need a serviceable type of running back, and I think that Devin Singletary is that. We found a gem in Tyrone Tracy in the 5th round here, a guy that he only played running back for 1 year at Purdue, and he was in college for 6 years. So he's got a lot of tread left on his tires. I think he can be the main staple in that running back room that was supposed to be a running back by committee type of situation in New York. But you can see in the last couple of weeks with Devin Singletary coming back, I want to say he had just 3 carries against Pittsburgh, and I think he had 8 carries against the Philadelphia Eagles. He hasn't breached 16 carries the whole entire season. So I think he'd make a perfect candidate. And we saw Cam Akers get traded away from the Texans back to the Minnesota Vikings and whatnot. And I think they got like a 6th rounder for him in that situation. If the Giants could get a 6th or best case scenario, get a 5th, I would totally take that for a guy like Devin Singletary. There are a couple other guys, some names that have been thrown around. Azeez Ojulari is one of them, but I think that he's been playing way too good as of late to be a guy that you're going to, trade to another team when you lack depth on that defensive line. We see it time in and time again that when the Giants take out Dexter Lawrence, there's nothing really up front on that defensive line. Kayvon Thibodeau's been dealing with this injury to the wrist. He's on IR. And if you don't have, a guy like Azeez Ojulari as a depth piece there, it gets really thin after that. We've got Timon Fox, and then, just a bunch of names you ain't going to know that I ain't going to know even. So Joe Shane has had his issues with depth already, one of them being the offensive line when he paid Daniel $60 million. He was banking on these 2 dudes that he drafted from North Carolina, Joshua Zito and Marcus McKeithen, to take that leap along with Evan Neal, which in return, by the time we got to week 5 against the Miami Dolphins, Daniel Jones is getting his head taken off. So, I think he's learned his lesson about depth. I wouldn't let go of Azeez Ojulari. And then there's Darius Slayton, who his contract is expiring. But, look at the way that Jalen Hyatt has been utilized this year. He has 1 reception on 8 targets on the entire season. So it's like, if you lose Darius Slayton, who's going to step up and fill that number 2 wide receiver position? That would maybe lean the New York Giants into not drafting a quarterback next year, which I'm not trying to see that.
Even on a bad QB season, too. We'll get to that after Trev's thing here.
So now that we're midway through the season, you guys are 2-6, we're 6-2, and both teams are starting to find out their identity. How do you see the New York Giants having a chance at shocking the world and upsetting us on Sunday?
Considering the way that the first game went, right, I don't think it would necessarily be shocking if they won the game, right? I am looking at Washington as the favorite, right? Absolutely. You guys have been scoring a ton of points. You guys are number 2 in scoring. You're number 2 in the NFC right now. All the statistics lean y'all way. And the other thing is that Daniel Jones is playing at home. On the road, he's got all 6 of his touchdowns on the road. And at home, he's throwing all of his interceptions. So he's a very different quarterback in front of that MetLife crowd. Crazy. The passer rating goes from like 106 to 60 at home, on the road. Now, for you guys, I cover y'all team as well, too. And Jaden Daniels is dealing with a little bit of this as well, but in the opposite realm. If you look at the way that y'all play, especially with your red zone offense at home, y'all are 6 of 21 in the red zone at home. Yeah. Jaden Daniels' Hail Mary, that I was at that game on Sunday, too, one of the craziest games I've ever been to in my entire life. But that was his 2nd passing touchdown at home this season, and you guys are 4-0 at home, right? So that says to me what? Well, Washington's kind of benefiting from playing a 4th-place schedule. That's not taking nothing away from what y'all have done this season. Love the moves with the new owner, new coach, new OC, new all of that. But I think what we got to keep our eyes on here is Cliff Kingsbury is succeeding in a way that a lot of people did not expect that to happen, right? And I got some numbers on Cliff that came from I want to say 3 or 4 years ago on my podcast that you guys, you should know about these numbers. So Cliff Kingsbury has been known to collapse as soon as it gets cold.
Yeah,
but the difference is this year is you guys have some good running backs over there. I love the pickup of Austin Eckler. Brian Robinson is a guy that I wanted to pair with Saquon Barkley since day one. But now you look at his collapses over the years, and this dates back over a decade. In 2013, and I'll go from 2013 all the way to 2021, he lost 5 of his last 6, 4 of his last 6, 4 of his last 6 again, 6 of his last 8, 5 of his last 5, 7 of his last 9 in his first year as the Cardinals head coach, 5 of his last 7 that year that Kyler Murray had an MVP-like season, and then 5 of his last 6 in 2021. Now, he's not the head coach, so that definitely yields well for you guys. But I am looking at the Washington Commanders as they are a good team. But how good of a team are they? I think once they go up against Philadelphia, once they go up against even Dallas, who struggled against the New York Giants as well, they only beat us 20-15. That game was there for the taking. Daniel Jones fell apart in the second half of that game as well. But once you guys play those teams, I think it'll really give you an identity of where you stand this season. Washington is on the up and up, no doubt about it. You guys got the quarterback, you got the head coach, and I think you have the offensive coordinator. You obviously got the general manager, the owner, all that stuff is intact. But it's like, I've heard people talking about this in the chat, Super Bowl and all that. And I understand you guys haven't been in this territory in very long, right? The last time you guys were a division winner was at 7-9 in 2020, right? So it's unfamiliar territory. But I think that the other thing you got to keep your eye on is Jaden Daniels is ascending, right? He's getting better and better every week. When you look at that quarterback we saw in week 1 against the Bucs, who couldn't get the ball in the end zone with his arm, but did get into the end zone 2 times with his legs. He's a stronger quarterback than people can even imagine. I know he's built kind of like Awthentik when you see him on the field, right? But he knows how to get those extra yards, and sometimes that could get him into trouble. We saw that with the injury. But I think that the gauge meter for who you guys really are, we haven't really quite had that set and calibrated quite right just yet until you guys get to go up against some more superior and less inferior competition. I mean, you guys have only beat one team that has a 500 record, and that happened on Sunday against the Chicago Bears. That's probably your best victory of the year, and I don't look at them like a really good team.
That's fair, and we know you don't feel that way about the Giants either, that they're not a really good team. But they always seem to play Washington pretty well, and especially that defensive line. Thibodeau tends to really show out against Washington. How can Washington's offensive line, which has improved, which might be shocking, under Bobby Johnson, who came from the Giants and didn't do so great over there. Maybe, if you whiff on a top 10 pick offensive tackle, that probably doesn't help. But how can this offensive line help Jaden Daniels with the rib injury keep upright against a rushing attack that is still pretty good and one of the Giants' strengths?
Yeah, Giants came into last week leading the league in sacks with 31. I think they're at 35 right now. I think a little bit of it is smoke, though, just a little bit. Dexter Lawrence, obviously not. That's the real deal. He's the fire right there. But I think you guys did a good job last game. You guys did not shy away from Dexter Lawrence. You guys had a lot of double teams right on him, and y'all ran it right through the A-gaps. And I think that's going to be the formula. A lot of people thought that the Giants were weaker on the outside, and you could run some outside zones against their 2 speed edge rushers in Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns. This week is going to be Azeez Ojulari. And I think Azeez Ojulari is just as good, if not better, than all the pass rushers we have on his team. He does lead the New York Giants right now as far as the edge rusher room goes in sacks. He's got 1 more than Brian Burns, 2 more than Kayvon Thibodeau. But I think a heavy dosage of run, y'all know, on Awthentik and the Beard, I was just about to say that's crazy. We are run the damn ball. That's what it is. It's STFURTDB. That's what it's all about. And, I just tweeted something out just before I came on here. Look, I don't want to hear about none of these analytics about the run. It's all about yards and touchdowns. And I think that's where you guys can, kind of relegate what the New York Giants do up front as far as, the pass rushing. And Jaden Daniels, man, he adds that extra element of being able to run himself. So I wouldn't be too worried coming into this game. Take care of Dexter Lawrence. I think everything else will fall in place.
All right. Well, so I want to get your official pick here on our show. We put out some graphics later in the week with all of our official picks, and we'll all give ours as well. So give us your official score and how it gets that way.
I think we're looking at probably a 13-point victory for the Commanders. I mean, the Giants offense has struggled to score points, not only at home, but just in general. We've struggled to score points. Came into last week, 14.1 points per game. And Daniel Jones is just the kind of quarterback that doesn't do those extra things like you're seeing from a Jaden Daniels. The deep ball accuracy, the deep ball touch, being able to laterally move in the pocket and manipulate the pocket a certain way and buy time to be able to get his receivers open down the field on broken plays. Daniel Jones is a guy that has to play within the script of the offense that Brian Dable has literally dumbed down so that his quarterback can try to succeed and not turn the ball over. One turnover in this game is going to make this game get ugly for the New York Giants, but I think it'll be something like, I'll go like 30. Let's go 30-17 in favor of the Washington Commanders. But if you never know, maybe we get some version of Daniel Jones where, the mutant comes out, he turns into X-Men or something, and he can play a good game out there. I mean, we have seen a couple
Vanilla
of games.
Vic, as he's called.
Yeah, maybe the Vanilla Vic. I don't know who coined that phrase. That's a disgrace to Mike Vick right there. But we'll see. I mean, he can be an efficient passer when he has time. So I think if the Giants want to have a chance, they got to protect Daniel Jones up front. But our defense has kept us in a lot of games, but it's a bend, don't break type of philosophy. And by the time we normally get to the end of the third quarter, that defense is pretty gassed out and looking at the other side of the ball like, can y'all help us out a little bit?
You want me to give my prediction now, fellas, and then you guys give yours?
Yeah.
I'll give mine real quick, and I'll be up there at MetLife watching this game on Sunday, so I'll give a little rooting interest and a little push from my end. But I've always worried about these games coming off a big emotional type game and having that inevitable letdown. But I've worried about it a couple of times this year. I worried about it after the Cincinnati game when we went up to Cincinnati on Monday night and won that close game. And I said, well, they're going to have a letdown. Then they just went out to Arizona and smoked them. Then the Baltimore game, right? You have that close game. It was a big deal around here. And they ended up losing, but still I kind of thought a letdown. Then they went out and smoked Carolina the next week. And then, of course, you have this game last week against Chicago, which was obviously a franchise-altering win. That's what I said at the beginning of the show. So I am concerned about a letdown, but this team has not shown that they are vulnerable to being given a letdown game. So I'm going to stick with Washington as well, and I think it's going to be a convincing win finally because a lot of things Awthentik said about Daniel Jones and at home and all those other things. And I like the score you gave, Awthentik, so I am going to go with Washington at 33-20. I think they will get some. I think the Giants will get some points, but 20, which is about what Washington has given up. They're giving up 20.9. So I'll go 33-20 Washington.
All right, Trev, who do you got?
I got Commanders 28-13.
Good score.
28-13.
I feel like the 30 might be a little bit too much. I kind of like 27.
I agree with that. I'm going to stick in the 20s. I'm going to go 24-9, largely because of what you're talking about with them being bad at home. Washington's defense is really coming into its own lately, and I really feel like, as you mentioned, tape coming out on Neighbors, being able to kind of contain him. Who's the other threat that they're going to have? Now, the running game would be a concern for me as that's coming on for the Giants, but I do think this defense is getting there. Now, the question is, will Washington be able to get into the end zone this time, unlike they did in week 2? So I'm going to go 24-9. That's my final pick with Washington. The good guys
the Giants are 27th in the league in stopping the run, and Washington on offense is, of course, 3rd in rushing. That's where
we got to run the ball.
We're going to run RTDB all day.
Yep. All day.
Whatever it takes to win on Sunday. We appreciate Awthentik coming here. A lot of people are mentioning that you're a great guest, and you are.
Absolutely.
And
Thank
your
you.
counterpart, it might even be even better because he actually does wear the burgundy and gold.
Yeah.
He's here in the chat right now, letting people know. Go by, hang out with Awthentik and the Beard. They talk Thursday, NFC East. Fantastic group, well produced. Great knowledge, good breakdowns, and a fantastic show. So we appreciate Awthentik coming here. I can't let you leave, though, until we get Ted's comment up here, as he did, in fact, put down $10 for us here. And yes, Awthentik, I stole that from you.
My kind of
the
talk
air
right
horn.
here.
Yeah, so Ted Lucas here. I'm a lifelong Commander fan and a lifelong Miami Hurricanes fan. My biggest fear is Cam Ward gets drafted by the Giants. There's no answer for him. He produces. You mentioned you cannot go into next season with Daniel Jones as your QB. This is not a strong QB draft as we're looking at it currently. How ecstatic would you be with Cam Ward? What would you give up to get Cam Ward if you're not number 1 overall?
I'd give up my left foot for Cam Ward right now. Cam Ward is quarterback 1 in this draft. A lot of people have been saying Shedeur Sanders. I've been hip to Cam Ward for like 3 years, going on 4 years now when he first got over there to Washington State. I love his skill set. Dynamic. He's a great runner, keeps his eyes down the field. I mean, kind of like a Jaden Daniels in a way, but more of a, the one thing I think that Cam Ward got to work on, though, because I can't give just all flowers. He's got to work on just like playing within time of the offense and just standing in the pocket. A lot of times he likes to back up. But, I mean, this dude's awareness is like literally on the level of a Patrick Mahomes. So people would say that about Caleb Williams, but I never really agreed with that. Cam Ward's the kind of guy that he sees and senses the pressure from every direction. He can make all the throws. He's got great velocity. I love how when he rolls out, he's not afraid to throw the ball back across his body, which a lot of coaches and, NFL fans across the country will tell you never throw across your body, but he does it and remains very accurate. I don't even think the wide receivers at Miami are too crazy like that right now. I like Restrepo. He's a really good wide receiver, but outside of that, there's not a ton of talent over there. That's the quarterback that I want. But, there's a little history in New York with, drafting African-American quarterbacks, which we have not done yet in the franchise. So we'll see. That is yet to be seen yet if they will do that. And there are a couple of other teams that might have a worse record than the Giants that get first dibs on at the top.
Carolina again might be picking up that way and try to their hand at it. Well, for our sake, if Cam Ward turns out to be good, I hope he doesn't go to the Giants. Unfortunately,
you think about how the NFC East would be with Jaden Daniels and Cam Ward. That would be amazing. And then Dak Prescott's like kind of on his way out. I'm a decent fan of Jalen Hurts. I think he's a pretty good quarterback. Had a really good game this past week too.
Yeah, it'll be good to see the NFC East coming back in force, as long as Washington is on top, of course.
Yes.
I want to thank Ted here again with the $10 donation. And of course, I want to send out a big thanks to Awthentik. Thanks for coming on here on Ref the District, giving us some insights in both the Giants organization and how we think this game is going to go. Make sure you head on over to Awthentik and the Beard and sub up, just like Hermit Rob has already done here on our channel. So thank you, Awthentik.
Appreciate y'all, man. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Awthentik. Yes, sir.
Appreciate it. Now, real quick here, because we've only got a few minutes left here in the show. I promised a few people that we had their comments starred. Let's go ahead and try to get to some of these here.
How awesome is Awthentik, by the way?
Fantastic. He's always a great guest. I love having him on, and you do yourself a favor. Go and listen to him. You might want to hope Daniel Jones is a QB, not just for Washington's sake, but he said that he would cover the entire NFL if that's the case. And if he does that, then he's going to be even more must-watch TV. Therefore, their slogan, right? It's the best television show not on TV. So
that's right.
And it's fantastic there. Let's get with JG's here. Where is Terry on the Trev elite scale? Now, he was not wide receiver 1 to start. He is in the top 5 right now in several different metrics, and he was an NFL top 100. He's probably going to be shooting up that list as well after this season. Where is he on your Trev elite scale?
10 being elite, 1 being not so much. I give him a 6 right now.
A 6. Is he top 15 wide receiver for you?
He's top 15. I've always said that. I don't know about top 10. I need this man to stop getting tripped up. Like, it's making it just score a touchdown. Just keep running. Stop getting tripped up. Stop trying to catch the ball short-armed all the time. It hits your chest and comes out and you have the drops. I need you to extend your hands out and catch it right here. Like where they put I just need you to be
able to get away from those shoestring tackles.
Yeah, that's
he
could have so many more touchdowns if he would just, stop getting shoestring tackle. But he is better than what I expected. But that just goes to show you what it looks like when you have a quarterback that can get him the ball. And it's really hard to think about. I mean, he said on Kay and Adams, he's having the time of his career right now with Jay. And for a receiver who has put up over 1,000 yards like the past 4 or 5 years with 20,000 different quarterbacks, he's having the best time of his career right now. So, I mean, to say that, to have those stats with 20 million quarterbacks and then coming on this season, he's rising on the elite scale, but I just need him to do a little bit more to be a true wide receiver number 1. True wide receiver number 1.
Okay, top 15 wide receiver, but not a true number 1. Make it make sense. Make it make sense.
Top 15. It's not top 10.
Let's move on here to I'm gonna do Gus first because this is more Jeremy has a great question and I'm going to get to Jeremy's here in a moment, but Gus, hot take: if we beat the Giants, sit Jaden and nicked up starters versus Pittsburgh, since we have a more important Philadelphia game only 4 days later. What do you guys think about this hot take coming from Gus, where it's rest your important pieces in a out of conference game that you can afford to lose to make sure that they can beat a division game, which you cannot afford to lose.
Nope. This ain't the end of the season where we have a playoff spot locked up. We're still trying to get there. Pittsburgh is 6-2 for a reason. They may not look like it, but they are 6-2. I don't want to rest anybody. If they're available to play them. Then you got to worry about them shaking off rust the next week in a division game because they didn't play this one game, and it's just play. We want to beat the teams that we're supposed to beat, and also beat the teams we're not supposed to beat. And I feel like Pittsburgh is one of those teams with the way they've been playing their record. So, yeah, man, load management. This ain't the NBA.
Audio listeners, load management, baby. Let's get ahead of the curve.
There are 17 games, and in the NFL, I mean, almost every game is a playoff game.
Yeah.
If you lose one game, you can go from the 2 seed to being out of the playoffs like that.
Washington, if they would have lost to Chicago, would have been the 7th seed, not the 2nd seed.
See? Right. Yeah, no way.
You can't, it's not a 162 game baseball season where you can rest guys, here and there, or 82 game basketball season where you can do. Every game is so freaking important to win. So no, I like the thinking. I like outside the box thinking. So I appreciate it, but that one's a little.
What you want to do is get it to the point in the game where you pull the starters out for the fourth quarter.
Yeah,
like we have in the first.
Absolutely.
That's what you want to do. That's the only way you rest them.
People. You're right.
Yeah, but I ain't gonna start off the game with everybody.
Rest them in the fourth quarter with the game out of line. I love it. All right, we talked about how in the midseason, we talked about how this team is doing really well and punching above their weight. I think that they're going to be buyers this trade deadline. Maybe not something big, but I'm thinking they're going to be buyers. Jeremy is asking, do you think a trade is coming before the deadline?
I don't.
I mean, if you've been on Twitter, you got all these fans who have so-called sources and insiders
it's all
I just got a text, stay tuned, or
it's a running joke. Yeah.
I mean, I think some people really think that they do have these insiders just because whatever. But if we do, like Nathan says, I don't think it'll be anything that's going to move the needle that much. It might be something more of a need than a want, something for the future, something that can contribute now, but also more so in the future. But I don't see anything like going crazy. I don't see us giving up anything crazy for that player unless it's
think about
I don't even know who now. So
think about all of the free agents that they signed. They all have something in common. They all have a connection to one of the coaches. So where the coach trusts them and believes in them. All of them. Eckler with Anthony Lynn and Zach Ertz with Kingsbury, and Biotish and with Dan Quinn, and on and on and on, right? Yeah. That's who they're going to bring in. They're going to bring in guys who they trust and who they know they may not be superstars, but are going to help this team build what they're trying to build. So if they do, I agree with Trev that it's going to be a nondescript kind of player who's just going to help fill in some holes. And I don't think it's going to be a trade thing. I think it's going to be a kind of a waiver wire sort of deal. So not this leadership team. That's not what they do. We've seen it already with all the rumors about Ayuk and Devontae Adams and on and on and on. It's not. I don't think so.
Yeah, so I want to make sure I do clarify my stance here. I don't think they're going for a banger, right? They're still talking about recalibration. That they know that this roster is missing several big pieces, even though they're performing much better than expected, or at least earlier than they expected. I don't think they're going to do it. If you look at San Francisco and what they did, they'd made one big swing for offense, and that was Christian McCaffrey. And that was when they were already a team making deep playoff runs.
Right. Yes.
Hasn't done that. And so I do think he was going to be more shrewd. But when you look at this roster, if they can get somebody's like third or fourth corner that they believe in, or somebody's offensive tackle who's sitting on the bench, that might be a better bench player, with Coleman being injured, with Trent Scott having to see some time because Cornelius Lucas has an injury. Like those are the things where we already see some of the shift in the practice squad with the tackles. I think that's where they're going to go for movement. It's not going to be a big name, and it's not going to be a big piece. It'll be closer to Cade York's deal than it would be anything else. Whereas a conditional 7th, than it will be anything of big notes here. Some cross fan rivalry / love here with Ted. $5. Gus Bus, you're nuts. Kick him off super chats. Will only rest in the off season. So yeah, he said it was a hot take. Gus absolutely said it was a hot take. It 100% was. It is not a hot take, however, to say that the Washington Commanders are favored against the New York Giants. Stoner's going to be there, so he won't be on our instant reaction. That'll be coming after that game. So catch Trev and I on Sunday. Of course, you can always catch us live on Wednesdays at 7:30 Eastern right here on YouTube and Facebook. Don't forget, you can also catch us on your favorite audio platforms as well. Afterwards, we like to push those as, kind of make sure you support us wherever you can. We appreciate everybody in the chat today. I'm Nathan. That's the Stoner. That's Trev. They're looking at each other because they know what's coming up here. Until next time.
Hey, we can have nice things now. We can.
Yay!